virus or bug or something. I don't have a fever, but I've been wearing a mask in close quarters out of an abundance of caution for my colleagues. Are you guys comfortable with this much distancing with me wearing a mask? Is everybody good? Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thanks for coming. I guess you're all graduating seniors? Soon to graduate? Oh, all right. Well, welcome, sophomore. Okay, wow. It's great to have you guys here. My name is Lisa Carringer. I'm the director for the Office for Access and Accommodation and also the ADA compliance coordinator for campus. So I'm directing both the student accommodations and employee accommodations. And the Career Services Center thought it might be a good thing to add to their launch agenda to offer graduates some information about asking for accommodations in the workplace. Reasons that you might want to disclose a disability to an employer. When you need to ask for accommodations, that's kind of obvious, right? To receive the benefits and privileges of being an employee, such as maybe going to the gym, if there's an employee gym, parties, company parties and things like that, holiday celebrations, you might need accommodations for that. Social functions, engaging in, like, if there's a cafeteria on site, if you need accommodations, you have food allergy, just things like that, where you can have enjoy the same benefits and experience as other employees. Or to explain an unusual circumstance, maybe you didn't need an accommodation, but something happened at work that caused it to interfere with your disability. A common example, and a kind of one from SIU sometimes, is the HVAC system, heating and cooling system. Sometimes people have different disabilities where the building temperature makes them more sensitive and it causes a flare in their medical condition. So that might be a situation where the person didn't need to ask for an accommodation, but because it's 120 degrees in their office, maybe they want to request to work from home until the HVAC is repaired. Does that make sense? And stop me if there are any questions, okay? So just some basics about the ADA in terms of employment. So right now, you're students at a public university. When we accommodate students based on their documented limitations and also factor in their preferences, what works best for them. In employment, it's a little bit different, but it is intended to improve the lives of people with disabilities, to allow people with disabilities to compete equally against non-disabled peers for employment and to receive the accommodations and protections at work as well. You can ask for accommodations at any stage in the process. During pre-employment, if you're a deaf applicant and you need an interpreter for the interview, that's a pre-employment request. Post-offer, maybe post-offer, you know that you have a medical condition that flares up and might cause you to be late to work once in a while, so you ask for a flexible arrival band a few times a month. Or while employed, something comes up, you didn't expect this duty to be difficult or to interfere with your limitations, then you can ask for accommodations at any point in the employment process. Any questions so far? Okay. So asking at the right time is important, the right time for you, but some restrictions might apply. In pre-employment, it's illegal for employers to ask you directly if you have a disability or a medical condition, unless it's a condition of employment for everyone. And that comes up a lot of times in factory work, large corporations where there's a lot of physical work. They do a medical exam for everyone, for all applicants, all employees who start working there. There's a medical process for everyone. So it's okay for them to ask if they're asking it of everyone. But if they're not asking it of everyone, it's not legal. Or when an accommodation is needed for you to apply for a position or interview or compete for it. After hire, when you have a known medical condition and you decide to disclose it voluntarily, that's okay. Or if your performance is being affected, and this is the most common area, right? A lot of us, your generation is probably more aware about disability, how to address it and how to talk about it and how to request what you need than any other generation before. But a lot of adults who just didn't expect that their medical condition or what was going on with them was really a disability, and it's affecting their performance, then that's the time to ask for accommodations. Now, if there's disciplinary action happening because of the performance, you can't go backwards, but you can go forwards. Okay, let's put that aside. Let's see if there's accommodations that help you perform your duties. So examples, assistance might be needed to complete an application. Maybe a person is blind and the place that they're applying to only has paper applications. It's kind of not cool. They should have electronic ones, but that could happen. Needed for the job interview, the example I said about a deaf person needing an interpreter. Or for employment testing, and that's real common for students with learning disabilities or attention deficit, autism spectrum. Maybe they need extra time to take the employee testing. A lot of places will test an employee to see where their skills are at that time. Students with disabilities who've had those accommodations in college deserve that same accommodation in the employment setting. Any questions? Post offer, if all employees are being asked, then they can ask before beginning work. They can ask for more information if it's related to the post offer inquiry. But they cannot rescind a job offer unless there's a couple caveats. Unless an accommodation makes a person unable to perform the duties. An accommodation in the workplace means that you're able to perform the essential duties with that accommodation. Or if it would pose a direct threat to the health and safety of others. I heard you guys talking about some technical stuff. Are you in a technical career or? Aviation. Can you think of an accommodation that a person might ask? I bet this is true in your profession, that a person might need or ask for that would be a direct threat to the health and safety of others in the workplace?
Like what would be something that wouldn't allow them to perform?
Yeah,
Color blindness, any type of, pretty
right,
much any of your senses being impaired besides taste.
right. So that would be a situation where, sorry, we can't provide you this accommodation because it's not readily available. You can't be colorblind and look at all those instrumentation. And it would cause safety issues for others, the passengers on the plane, your co-pilot, all those things. Things like that have come up, can come up. It does happen. So when you're employed, this is the most important part that I want everyone to understand. You know, after you land that job, it's not as typical to need accommodations for the interview process, but that does come up. But after you land that job, that's the time to disclose and talk with your supervisor if you are needing accommodations. So if it helps you to participate in the hiring process, like onboarding, an interpreter is another example. If it helps you to perform your duties, to have an accommodation, or to receive the benefits and privilege of being an employee, like participate in different things that the company has. Like at our, when the chancellor speaks to all employees, when he hosts the campus-wide presentation, we have captions just automatically at that event so that employees with hearing loss can just walk in and participate. It's best to disclose before you have performance issues, because you can imagine that leaves people feeling skeptical. It can start to look like an excuse making. So if you know you've looked at your job duties with your boss and you know, oh, that's something I might need extra time for, talk about it with them right away before the duties start, before issues start. Get it out in the open. It's the law. Most employers are going to engage with you. They're going to have a process and figure out what can be provided. You can disclose without a request for accommodation, but be clear about whether accommodations are needed. And this does come up sometimes as well. Sometimes employees want to say, hey, I just want to let you know I have issues with my neck, my back. So if there's any time like where we're needing to move stuff, if that's not part of your essential duties, but it comes up sometimes, you're lifting heavy boxes, maybe Kathleen, do you guys get boxes of pamphlets or stuff? I can't do that. So if it were something that were part of my direct duties, that would be an issue, but it's very occasional. It's not essential. I might just tell my boss, hey, I can't lift heavy objects. And the accommodation is, okay, we'll get someone else to do that. Confidentiality is really important. All disability related information is technically private health information. So it should be treated as such. So your direct supervisor should keep that information in confidence. If there's an HR personnel involved in discussing accommodations with you, that's held in confidence. Any documentation that they request from you is locked away or held in a protected network drive that's behind a HIPAA compliant firewall. So it's really limited information. You don't have to tell the employer your exact diagnosis, but you have to get your doctor or your provider, whoever's going to write the letter for you or whatever documentation you're going to provide. It has to describe what your limitations are. And it should really just focus on those disability limitations. Does that make sense? Trying to think of an example. A person might have generalized anxiety disorder and have the need to have flexible rest breaks. Well, maybe the employer has rest breaks at certain times. So this person could have their doctor write a letter and say, so-and-so has limitations with managing stress. Please allow flexible rest break. And then that would be a case where the employer ought to let that employee take a break when it's good for them, rather than at designated times, so long as that doesn't interfere with the flow of work that's getting done. Does that make sense? Do's and don'ts. Disclose when you need an accommodation, like I said. Know who to disclose to. You're going to want to talk to your supervisor or the designated HR person. Somebody trying to come in. I know how to disclose. You know, I need to talk with you about this. I have some limitations. I want to talk with you about accommodations that I need. Don't disclose too soon. Pre-employment, if you don't need anything in the job application process or to interview, don't say a word. That's your private information. And you may not need any accommodations. So there's no reason to disclose it without the need for accommodation. So don't do it too soon. And don't do it too late. When there's a performance issue, when something comes up and you've been docked for not getting a duty done or it wasn't satisfactory, you can start to see as soon as you work at the place that you're going to work at, you can see what your duties are and analyze them based on what you know you need when you do that type of activity. That was really quick. I burned through that. But the best resource I have for you is a website called Ask Jan. And it's all things related to disability employment. You can even search as an individual and put in what your condition is, what your disability is, and it'll give you ideas for accommodations. I use that all the time. I share it with employees. I share it with supervisors. It helps us come together and formulate accommodations. And then there are some advantages, right? Having a disability is kind of a diversity hire. You are a person that might have a privilege to extra points for federal work. When those things are point systems and they are targeting certain groups of individuals to bring them into federal agencies or state agencies, there are programs with the federal and state agencies that want to hire people with disabilities. So those are a couple of websites that can tell you about that, both in Illinois and then nationally working for the federal government. What kind of questions do you have? Please ask me questions. I should have taken a whole lot longer than this.
This is an extreme hypothetical case, but what if a request for accommodation is denied without valid reason? What recourse do you have then?
Then you can appeal it. You can contact the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. You can contact an attorney. Get someone else to look into it and assist you with that. Well, I don't want to, that's not the right question. If you currently feel like you do have a disability or limitation and you haven't asked the university yet for accommodations, the Office for Access and Accommodation can assist you with like classroom, extra time on exams, note-taking, different types of accommodations that might assist you. So please do come and see us if you haven't already. And then if you ever want to talk with me about asking your employer for accommodations, if you're already gone, you've already graduated from the university, contact Career Services and tell them that you'd like to be put in touch with me. And because it's something, post-graduation, those kinds of things need to flow through them. So they're keeping record of helping graduates, but then I'll give you a call and we can talk through it a little bit. I can't give legal advice. I can just kind of remind you of these tips for disclosing, give you resources and things like that. If you ever need assistance or another graduate that might need assistance, I'm happy to answer some questions, just guide you in the right direction.
Another thing, you mentioned earlier something along the lines of don't share too much.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think would be an example of sharing too much at a time where you do need to express accommodation requests or disability information?
Right. I'm always of the mind that you don't really need to share your diagnosis. There are rare cases when the employer or the school might want to know because it helps them do their job of accommodating better. But I think the exact diagnosis is not, it's not required by the law. What's required is disability related limitations.
Okay,
So if
so
you're
describe more how it's affecting you then.
right,
Okay.
exactly how it affects you. And then you don't have to, because, right, people discriminate. That's just life, right? We know that. All of us in here have probably experienced that at one point or another. They discriminate for different reasons, and it's not even purposeful. It's just entrenched held beliefs. And there's no more marginalized group on the planet than people with disabilities. They've been institutionalized, euthanized, sterilized, all the eyes. And so people just have those perceptions of limitations and disability that are negative. And you don't really necessarily have to share your diagnosis with anyone. You just have to share what it is that you're not able to do, how it gets in your way. You can share it if that makes sense for you, but you don't have to. If you feel safe, you've got a good relationship with your boss, you think it's okay. Hey, I haven't told you this before, but I have insomnia and sometimes I get sleepy in the afternoon. Can I move my morning break to the afternoon? You're done, right? So you can, in those instances, name it. But I would tread lightly and make sure that you don't do that too soon or tell too much, because you just don't want people to, you don't have to let it all hang out to get what you have a right to get. Any more questions? Kathleen, do you have questions? Can you help me stretch this out?
What if you know it's not a safe situation to disclose to your supervisor? What if something has been said and you're like, oh, wow.
I don't think that my supervisor will be down with me wanting accommodations.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a big enough place, they're gonna have a human resources department or an ADA coordinator. A lot of public institutions have ADA coordinators. It's required by the law. Private institutions aren't required to have that, but they do have someone employed there that's supposed to handle those things. So I would talk with that person.
What if you're not on probation?
Doesn't matter.
That's-
Nope. Nope. You can be on probation and still get accommodations. You have the right to it. It's scary, I know, like
Yeah.
to have to disclose and have to address issues, but that's the right choice to make rather than postponing it till there is an issue.
the thing I want to ask. So in my experience, when in academia, you need to disclose accommodation,
Mhm.
you often need to provide documentation,
Mhm.
often maybe an IEP
Mhm.
or something like that.
Right?
In the employment scene, is that kind of documentation still needed, or do you need to get different kinds of documentation?
I would recommend different kinds of documentation because an IEP is, pretty old at this point when you're looking for a job. And it discloses more information than you want to. There's in an IEP, like your teachers are writing in there about how you did good on a project or didn't have a good attitude in class. Those are sorts of things you don't really need an employer to know. So if you do have a disability, you had an IEP in high school, I would find a provider, either a medical provider or a psychologist or a counselor, to write you just a generic letter about what your limitations are and what accommodations might assist you in a workplace. And that way, it's not your whole history and past. We like to get that here because we're an educational institution. We want to see how we can help you in the classroom here at SIU. But an employer probably doesn't need all that information.
Okay. So, ask Jen, can you help with that?
Yes, yes, you can search as an individual. There's the site, part of the site's for me as a ADA coordinator or employer. Part of the site is for individuals, and you can search your condition or limitation, and it will give you ideas of different employment accommodations and really good examples of people who've had an accommodation in the past and what it did for them. So it's very helpful for all parties involved. And there's stuff on there about your rights, what to do if you don't get accommodations, if you're denied, all of those things. It's very, very, very useful website. Well, thank you, guys. You got another question?
One last thing.
Okay.
If we want to look back at some of the information later, where can we revisit this now? These materials, say the
I believe that
slideshow.
this presentation is going to be posted on YouTube, on the Career Services YouTube channel. If I like the presentation and I can hear my voice and everything, I might post it on my website. Just depends, or I might re-record it. Maybe add some more information in, so it's a little longer. But yeah, this should be available on the Career Services YouTube channel.
Okay.
Or you take a pic with your